Michael J. Amico Wallace was born in 1973 and grew up in a very wealthy family in Leominster, Massachusetts. His senior year in high school, he began having serious bouts of depression and began hearing voices and entered inpatient treatment for 45 days. Doctors told him that he would most likely have future episodes. Michael was somewhat embarrassed about his mental health, but reportedly took his medication as prescribed for many years. He was very athletic and participated in many sports in high school and excelled academically. He was accepted into Harvard, but wasn't quite sure what he wanted to become, but was studying psychology. He graduated cum laude in 1995 and spent 3 years working in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Michael's waves of depression came in cycles and often manifested itself in the cold winter months. Well into his 20s, he could still be described as highly ambitious, eccentric, analytical, athletic, and extremely passionate. But he felt that his depression drained him and those around him emotionally. Not only did he want to fix himself, he wanted to cure the world of this horrible illness and its stigma. In 1997, he moved to California, in part to escape the seasonal affective disorder, and this is where he became employed as a marketing manager by Sun Microsystems. This is when Michael's stress in his life would spiral out of control. He usually received good reviews at work, but was reportedly given a bad review by his superior, which angered him greatly. It was speculated the bad review was in retaliation of jealousy over a friendship Michael had with the superior's significant other. Michael sought legal justice and began fighting it in court. Meanwhile, his father, who he was very close with, suddenly passed away. This added a lot of stress and confusion to his life because his father was a firefighter, was extremely athletic and healthy, and he couldn't understand the sudden death. Michael would later marry, but separated from his wife when she allegedly had an affair. He spoke to his family back in Massachusetts daily and even mentioned walking away and taking on a new identity. Ironically, he had a fascination with the movies The Bourne Identity and Catch Me If You Can. His family then began to try and arrange for him to return home. On the morning of February 4, 2003, he walked out of his house that he shared with a roommate in the 100 block of Loyola Avenue in Menlo Park, California, and passed his 2 cars and was never seen again. He was last heard from between 1 and 2 p.m. the same day when he called his estranged wife in San Francisco on his cell phone. He had made plans to visit her, but called to cancel them, and this is the last time his phone was used. Police issued a warrant for Michael's arrest after his disappearance because he failed to perform community service on a DWI charge. They don't think he disappeared as a result of the DWI conviction, though, and he doesn't have a valid passport or driver's license. On February 23rd, a McDonald's restaurant manager in Pacifica, California, said he thought he had seen Michael in the store earlier that day. The man he saw had been wearing a green windbreaker-type jacket and a white baseball cap and was driving around in a yellow Chevrolet Corvette with no license plates. He ordered hash browns, which is Michael's favorite McDonald's food. The man appeared to be confused and was acting oddly and then drove away south on Highway 1. It is unclear if the man that the manager saw was actually Michael or just another man who resembled him. While he had suffered a number of setbacks in the year prior to his disappearance, with the death of his father, the loss of his job, and the separation from his wife, the day of his disappearance, he sounded optimistic and said he had decided to stay in California instead of moving back home. In 2015, 12 years after his disappearance, many believed he was a homeless man found living in San Diego, but turned out to be someone else. Do you think he disappeared on his own or met with foul play? Let me know in the comments below. As of April 2022, Michael has never been found and this case remains unsolved. Amiah Robertson was born July 14, 2018 to Amber Robertson. On March 9, 2019, Amber would leave her 8-month-old Amiah in the care of Robbie Lyons, her alleged boyfriend at the time. Lyons claimed he dropped Amiah off at Jeanette Browning's family home at South Holmes Avenue in Indianapolis. However, Jeanette would deny being in care of Amiah that night, but said she had babysat her a couple of times in the previous months. Lyons would also tell Amber that he dropped Amiah off with Jeanette. However, it wasn't until the next morning that Amber realized that she had never been left with Jeanette and that she was nowhere to be found. At this point, Lyons began taunting her about Amiah's whereabouts and continued to say he would take her to get her daughter if she went with him alone, but she was afraid of him and never went. On March 16, 2019, Amber called the police and said that Lyons had hit her with his car after they were arguing about Amiah's whereabouts. Lyons was ultimately arrested for battery and bonded out shortly after. This was the first time police had been informed that Amiah was missing, but for some unknown reason, they were led to believe that Amiah had only been missing since March 14th. It would be 3 more days before the police would realize that she had actually been missing since March 9th. Turns out that Amber and Lyons were living in a car in an alley behind the Brownings' home. This is where the police were called on the 16th and where they would conduct their first of many searches of the home. After Amiah was officially reported missing, her mother's behavior, combined with the delays in reporting, turned the public against her quickly. These are the events of March 9th that supposedly took place. The babysitter Jeanette Browning and Jeanette's friend Brenda Carter spent the day in an old maroon 1996 Isuzu Rodeo with Amiah and Lyons in the area of Rockville and Mickley Avenue and were at a hotel that afternoon after they got their tax returns. The story goes that Lyons left to take Brenda and Jeanette to Jeanette's home, leaving baby Amiah with Jeanette for the night. He then returned to the motel where Amber was without Amiah. Jeanette, on the other hand, claimed she was not Amiah's babysitter that night and had recently met Amber and had only watched Amiah very briefly a couple times while someone ran to the gas station. She then later told police that Amiah was in the car and okay when Lyons brought her home. However, Brenda first said she couldn't tell if Amiah was in the car due to a lot of luggage, then said Amiah was fine in the car when she was dropped off at the Browning home. There have been multiple searches conducted at this home at various times, including digging a small section of the backyard. Less than 2 months after her disappearance, Lyons was once again arrested, but this time for check fraud. A video was made public 2 weeks after she was last seen that shows Lyons leaving the home the day after Amiah was reported missing. In the video, Lyons is empty-handed as he steps out of view of the camera. Seconds later, he is headed around the yard toward the rear of the house. He goes out of view of the camera again, this time for several minutes. He reappears in view of the camera, walking south down an alley and carrying what appears to be a trash bag. A few minutes later, Lyons comes back in the view of the camera once again. This time, he is empty-handed and has another man with him. The two go through the front gate and out of the camera's view. The camera does not show him going back inside. A short time later, 2 police officers show up at the house. A few minutes later, Lyons and the other man come back into the camera's view carrying more bags. On March 20th, they searched the banks of the White River based on a tip. The search was ruled inconclusive, but later confirmed that items were found that belonged to Amiah. Social media was huge in this case, providing law enforcement tips, and every search was live-streamed on Facebook from a lot of people. The police also stated that Lyons had given various locations where Amiah should be, and all locations were checked and cleared. On March 24th, police searched an apartment complex pond nearby based on a tip and returned the next day with sonar scanning technology, but Amiah was not found. 1 month later, on April 29th, Jeanette Browning, the supposed babysitter, had her home searched once again. Bags of possible evidence were removed, and police returned the next day with cadaver dogs and a team from the University of Indianapolis to search a small section of the backyard, but nothing was found. It's unclear if Amber knows who the actual father of Amiah is. After her disappearance went public, Keith Ripberger came forward claiming he believed himself to be Amiah's biological father and had been trying to verify paternity, but Amber had been uncooperative. He gave some interviews as well, stating he was very certain he was the father and was crushed by the situation. The local news station reached out to Amber to confirm potential fathers of Amiah, but she never replied. Chief Bailey said investigators feel Lyons has more to tell them about Amiah's disappearance. He also stated that there are people that know exactly what happened to her but don't have the moral courage to come forward. Amber eventually had a third child, and as of April 2022, no one has been arrested for Amiah's disappearance and presumed homicide. Richard Willis Bendele was born in 1967 and went by Rick. He was described as nice and fun to hang out with and was well loved by many. He attended Burley High School in Idaho, and at the age of 29, he was a supervisor at the J.R. Simplot Company, a potato processing plant in Hayburn, Idaho. He was a father of 2 and enjoyed hunting, camping, and fishing. He was going through a divorce and had been living with his girlfriend, Cindy Cowitz, and her 3 children in Burley, Idaho for less than a year. On November 16, 1996, Rick went to his mother Sandy's house to borrow his late father's shotgun to hunt pheasants at the Great Rift north of Minidoka County the next day on the 17th. The rift is about 635 square miles and includes the craters of the Moon National Monument and the Wappi lava field, and is one of the deepest and largest recent volcanic systems in the continental U.S. About 15,000 years ago, a fissure extending 65 miles opened to emit successive lava flows, creating a lunar-like landscape. He was familiar with this area and even hunted here with his father in the past. He called his mother at 6 p.m., using his bag cell phone he kept for emergencies, to say his truck had broken down on a remote desert road. He sounded nervous and said he thought someone had deliberately tampered with it and that they still could be out there. He couldn't provide specific directions to the truck and said he was going to mark a nearby turnoff so his mother could find him and that he would call her back. Meanwhile, his mother contacted his girlfriend and they set off to find him in the girlfriend's vehicle, but they had to turn around and go back to town after their car struck an object that damaged the oil pan. At 2 a.m., they reported him missing. 6 inches of snow fell that night, obliterating any tracks. He clearly made it to the turnoff because searchers would later find an empty beer box and cans that they thought he had used to mark the road. The next morning, after they reported him missing, search and rescue found Rick's truck near the Laidlaw Coral area north of Rupert, Idaho. The window was smashed and there was glass on the ground. His coat, cell phone, and his father's shotgun he'd borrowed were all still inside. The truck's battery was broken and turned upside down. However, an extensive search of the area turned up no other evidence except a right-hand leather glove, a right-hand fryer glove of the kind Rick used at work, and one of his new black sneakers. For days, search teams, dogs, planes, and a helicopter scoured the mud-clotted roads and lava fields. Police report that the dogs lost his scent at the road as if he drove off with someone. At some point prior to 2010, the sheriff's office lost the original reports for the case, possibly when the sheriff's office moved. Some speculate that maybe he wasn't going hunting that evening at all, and actually had intentions of meeting someone and brought the gun just in case. It was believed that he was sober at the time, but he did have a problem with drugs and alcohol in the past. Did he get lost and succumb to the elements, or take shelter in a lava fissure, which were prevalent in the area and has never been found? Some speculate that he may have just tried to fix his battery, got angry, tossed it back in, and then punched the window, which would explain the broken glass. It seems difficult to imagine that he would walk off without his jacket or cell phone, or that someone could abduct a man with a shotgun. Either way, authorities suspect he may have been taken against his will, and as of April 2022, this case remains unsolved.